And good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the OHSAA Tailgate Show, brought to you live from the 6th floor here at Benson Stadium at the suite level. We're getting ready for the final ball game here tonight and of these state football championships. Frank Salona alongside Hall of Fame coach Tom McDaniels, Bob Jeffries alongside our WHBC crew here in Stark County, and we're glad to be with you tonight. And as our final report here on the Tailgate Show, we look forward to one final game. And, guys, I think this one is going to live up to the billing because I think we've got a couple of pretty good teams that we're going to see tonight. But before we talk about that one, I know you're getting ready for that one, but let's talk about what we've seen this weekend and some of the football that I think, it was all over the spectrum. It was close games. There were some blowouts. And things that probably happen in state championships. You have some teams that are here every year. You have some teams that are making their first appearance, so which will be the case here later tonight with Indian Valley. But, guys, the first game on Thursday, we saw Thursday night Cincinnati-Anderson and Avon. Avon winning that game, and that was their first state championship game. Bobby, you were here. And Coach, I know you talked about it as well earlier today. That game was played in a snow globe, but really, when you think about it, and talk about some of the things you saw in that game that with the weather conditions and things that really impressed you.
I saw two completions by Avon's quarterback under very adverse conditions, and we're not talking about short throws. He had a corner throw in the end zone, probably 40, 45 yards in the air. The receiver never had to make an adjustment to the football. He was looking over his left shoulder and perfectly placed, and he missed. He didn't complete the catch. Yeah. But then the touchdown that he had was wasn't the same corner route. It was a different route, but it was the same thing. The receiver never had to break stride, caught it in stride, perfectly led, had to maintain the separation. There was slight separation between the receiver and the defender, so the ball had to be that accurate. In very adverse conditions, those are two of the greatest throws I've seen.
Yeah. And Bob, you were telling me earlier, you were sitting upstairs, and the snow was coming up instead of down. It was blowing everywhere, and who shook the snow globe, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
You have very interesting winds here at Benson Field. I mean, you look at the flag, and it's like a very, very harsh wind, but then you look above the goalposts, and it's really not like moving up very much. So very interesting swirling winds you had here, and it had a big effect of that game. I mean, Anderson mixed an extra point. They then later in their second touchdown decided not to go for the extra point. They went for two. So special teams and kicking really played a big part of that game.
Well, there have been some kicking miscues more so than handling the ball and throwing the ball. There have been numerous mixed extra points and shanked punts, and I think the weather has maybe affected the kicking game, and that's not unusual. It's affected the kicking game even more so than anything on offense or defense. I'll mention this. During the last game, I'm on the 7th floor watching the game, and the flag is straight out. The American flag is straight out in like a northeast direction. So we think, okay, we got a southwest wind blowing northeast, and I look at the flags on the top of the goalposts, and they're not moving. Yeah. And the gentleman I'm sitting with, he said, how can that be? I said, well, this south stands, it's blocking the wind, and serving as a block for the wind down at that level because those flags are barely fluttering. And the American flag is straight out, pointed to the north and east.
Yeah. And, Coach, you spent a lot of time here at Canton-McKinley, and you had to play on this field with the same conditions, the field is in the same direction it's always been.
Yes.
The backstop here, the south stands, if you will, isn't as big as it was, or it's bigger now than it was as Fawcett Stadium.
Absolutely bigger than it was.
So it does block a little bit more of the wind. You had to deal with a little bit harsher conditions, I would think.
Yeah, and more often than not, our weather, it seems to me to come from the west to the east, and maybe that's why they have fields running east and west instead. I don't know. But, this is a bigger blockade to any wind coming out of the south of the southwest than anything we had when it was called Fawcett Stadium.
Well, that Avon game, there was only one punt, and it was by Anderson. Yeah. And at the end of the game, I don't know if you remember, Avon, they were on their own 14-yard line, 4th and 1. They decided to go for it.
Yes.
I'm like, oh, here comes our first punt. No.
Yes.
I mean, they're in the shadow of like giving up the tying touchdown. They go for it. They made it, but that was a big risk. And I think it was weather.
And that was more a matter of circumstance than daring do.
Yeah.
At that particular point, because I mean you're really backed up,
Right.
from that yard line especially.
Yep, absolutely. Well, that was the first game, and Avon won that one 20-13. They ended up the season 16-0. They perfect year for Avon. The next game was Friday morning. Not so great. That was a ball game that kind of got away from Jeromesville, Hillsdale. They ran into a buzzsaw with Maria Stein, Marion local guys, 74-0. You don't typically see that in state championship games, but Marion local is a different breed. This is a different kind of team, a team that it's just year in and year out is just loaded. They're very disciplined. They have great talent, and they showed it Friday morning. And you kind of felt bad for Hillsdale, but give them credit. They made it to the championship game, and you just have to take your lumps.
Yeah, there's no question about that. And that was Maria Stein's 12th state championship. If
No,
I'm
actually,
not.
those are 15th.
Okay, I'm sorry.
yeah.
15th state championship, and all of that experience in this game before it, I think, presented itself. And Hillsdale, a little school on the south side of 30 as you go toward Mansfield, probably had two really good classes back-to-back, maybe three, but it contributed to a great regular season and a great postseason up until this particular point. And it's sad, to see it end this way, and I hope those kids don't take and think of the season as they reflect back on just the outcome of that game. That was a great season for them, and they caught Maria Stein, on a roll and playing great, at that moment.
Yeah, you just take it and you move on.
Hillsdale had one of the most incredible games ever, and you were there.
I was there.
I mean,
Two, and you never see this, but 2 Hail Marys in one game. One to end the first half, they scored on, and one to end the ball game, they scored on against Malvern in the was it the second round? I think it was.
that
the
was
third
a regional
round.
semifinal. They won 50-48.
Yeah, 50-48 in that ball game, and I tell you what, that was one of the best games I've seen in a long time.
If you get one a career, consider yourself lucky as a coach.
So 2 in one ball game.
Wow.
Give them credit. They made it to the state championship. Unfortunately, like you said, they ran into a buzzsaw with Maria Stein, Marion local. The second game yesterday, that was Bishop Watterson and Toledo Central Catholic. And Bishop Watterson, the Eagles, a winner 19-14 in that game. Coach, I sat with you and Josh at that game, and we really enjoyed. I think that was one of the best games I had seen this weekend. It ranks right up there with the one we just saw earlier.
Right. At the beginning of the game, just maybe halfway through the first quarter, I thought that Central Catholic had more talent, more speed, more quickness. And Bishop Watterson got off to a little bit slower start, and it was, to me, noticeably at a slower speed. But that did sustain itself through the course of the game. Right. And they didn't instantly get faster, but I think they got into the flow of the game and executed better and were ultimately the victor. But it was not easy. Right. It was not an easy thing to overcome.
Yeah, Toledo Central Catholic, they had won 2 straight state championships before that. They had beaten Bishop Watterson for one of those the year before.
Right.
Okay.
And an interesting thing, the quarterback of Columbus Bishop Watterson, Drew Belisari. If you remember that last name, that's Steve's son. So,
yes.
But, I mean, they were a run-first team. They got down, like you said, 7-0. That was a score at half. But they put in a really good game plan in the second half. They kept on the ground. Zach Weber had 28 carries, 134 yards, a touchdown. Also had 7 tackles on defense. Drew Belisari, 13 carries, 63 yards, and a touchdown. And he ended up 5 of 9, 88 yards, and a touchdown through the air. So they opened it up a little bit, and they were able to control that second half.
And another player on that team, speaking of Ohio State, Steve Belisari, former quarterback at Ohio State, Jeff Uhlenhake's son,
correct,
Ben, was on that team as well. Number 10.
Yeah.
And, again, contributes to their success. So, you get that football lineage there, and it certainly has paid off for Bishop Watterson. So that was another game. That was the 3 o'clock game yesterday. Then the nightcap last night, we saw a good one. It was Olentangy Liberty and Archbishop Moeller. And guys, Mighty Mo, when Mighty Mo comes into town, I think a lot of people take a look. But it was Olentangy Liberty who came out on top of that one, 28-14. We were impressed. I know, Coach, we talked about this with the quarterback of Liberty. Even though Moeller's quarterback was named Mr. Ohio yesterday or day before, and but that ball game, I think it lived up to its billing.
And the Olentangy, we're talking about Olentangy, right? Yeah, I think their quarterback had the best single game performance so far in the playoffs up until this most recent game, which we're going to talk about in a little bit, because we had a player here tonight this afternoon that put on a show too.
Yeah, you're talking about Andrew Leonard. 17 of 23, 272 yards, 3 touchdowns. But he had a great wide receiver that night. Christian Moulton's 8 receptions, 161 yards, and he caught all 3 of those touchdowns.
The other thing that I have noticed, even in today's games, and we know this from doing our regular season throughout the county here, if you get this far, I think it might be a requirement for you to be able to run quarterback-designed runs. And I've seen more of them on 3rd and 4th and short yard situations out of the gun. Right. And we've talked about quarterbacks having to improvise, and I'm a big believer in design runs. Where we're blocking that play for that guy. But I think we've seen a ton of those from all of the teams. In the tournament so far. So maybe that's a trend we got to...
I think that's how Avon won their game. I mean, their quarterback got a lot of yards on the ground.
Correct.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it takes us to today, this morning, our first game at 10:30. That matched Coldwater and Kirtland, 2 teams that they're no strangers to this environment. They have been here. It's almost every year you see one of the 2 here. And what a ball game by Coldwater today. And I was really surprised. I don't know about you guys, but I don't think I've ever seen or heard that Kirtland had a running clock against them ever, whether it's regular season or playoffs. And at one point in this ball game, Coldwater did that. It was 31-7 was the final. They were up 31-0 at one point, running clock for a bit there in the second quarter. But hand it to Coldwater again, a well-oiled machine. This is a team that comes out of that MAC conference that we talk about down in Southwest Ohio, and they are just so disciplined, so well coached. Coach Chip Otten and Tiger Laverty going at it. I mean, one of the 2 best coaches in the state of Ohio. I don't care what level you talk about.
Correct.
And that game, I think I was it was kind of an eyebrow raiser to me because I thought it would be a little closer. But hats off to Coldwater. They played well.
The thing we have to remember, and the thing we all hope for, prior to the 7 games, is that both teams bring their A game. And both teams are playing great football, because then we get greater games to watch. But that doesn't always happen. And certainly I don't think that was Kirtland's A game. Right. But I think it was Coldwater's. Yes. And when that happens, sometimes it gets embarrassing. And when I've been on both sides of that, so I know that to be a reality. And you prepare and you hope you can manufacture your A game, in a state championship game. Sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't.
You got some numbers, obviously.
Yeah, and interesting. Both of those teams won state championships in 2020. Coldwater Division 6. That's right. Kirtland was Division 5. So these are 2 teams that have been here before. They've done a lot, and that was Coldwater's 8th title, state championship. But Balin Blockberger, 8 of 12, 133 yards, 2 touchdowns. Miles Potcotter, I think that's how you say it, 23 carries, 127 yards, and a touchdown. And Mason Welsh, 3 receptions, 18 yards, 2 touchdowns. So they had a very balanced offense, excellent defense. They got that running clock at the beginning of the 4th quarter. And that late touchdown, I mean, that was sort of like
by the way,
game was already over.
So that's just 2 running clocks in almost 3 days. Is that right? Okay.
Yeah. And we had Denny Kincaid with us earlier today on our earlier show, and he mentioned that Coldwater state championships in the school history, 150.
Well, that's the whole conference.
The whole conference.
That's the whole conference.
Okay.
Yeah, Midwest Athletic Conference, 150 team titles in all sports.
Okay.
I mean,
so that's pretty impressive.
Incredible.
Well,
You imagine like the Federal League.
You got to
or
tell me another one that's more impressive.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll wait. I won't hold my breath though.
Yeah, but unbelievable the success that the MAC conference has, and I think it was 15 I heard as far as state championships in the last year with Coldwater, whether it's volleyball, track, wrestling, you name it. They're playing for a state championship almost in every sport, and you look at the success that we have here in Stark County, the McKinleys of the world, the Maslins of the world, the Lakes, the Perrys. We talk about that success, but how about a team like Coldwater that plays in an incredible conference where we had 2 state champions out of that conference today or this weekend, and there's probably 3 or 4 other ones that went 2 or 3 games deep into the playoffs.
The only comparison we might have here in terms of all sports, not to that extreme, is Jackson.
Yes.
They win that all federal,
yeah.
all sports award every year, and they compete at the state level in multiple sports too.
Yeah.
And win, state championships. And not everyone, but that's the closest thing we have to compare to that.
Exactly.
Yeah, Coldwater's only loss was to Marion Local.
Exactly.
So, I mean, right there.
And we talked about that too.
Yes.
You're beating up on each other throughout the season. When you get to the playoffs, it's not that tough of a schedule until you get 2-3 games deep because you've played the best competition that you're going to play in the regular season.
There's probably a really good team in that conference that went 6-4.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It was a really good team.
Exactly. So, and then this game we just witnessed here, the 3 o'clock game, was Liberty Center and Ironton got the win. They improved to 15-1 on the year. That was Liberty Center's first loss. They end the season at 15-1, 28-17, and what I thought was probably one of the best ball games that I've watched all weekend. This ball game was tight. Liberty Center kind of reminded me a little bit of Perry here in Maslin, Perry, that didn't want to run or didn't want to throw the football unless they absolutely had to. And it was something that was impressive to the point where whether it was 3rd and 13 or 3rd and 4, they were running the football, and they got it.
Yep.
And that was impressive to me. But congratulations to Ironton as they win this one. That is their second overall state championship in school history. They've got some athletes, and I know, Bob, you'll talk about that. One of the kids going to Missouri. I think another one's going to Penn State. And
the Missouri young man had an incredible evening.
Yeah,
afternoon.
sure
Incredible
both
afternoon.
sides of the ball.
Yes.
Yeah. So, Coach, your thoughts as you watched that game?
I had a really good thought while you were talking, and I lost it temporarily. And it may come back to me. So why don't you turn?
All right,
the
we'll let Bob talk.
So let's talk about some stats. The gentleman you're talking about, Sean Terry.
Sean Terry, yep.
2 carries, 75 yards, and a touchdown. Not a bad average. 10 catches, including an incredible catch in the fourth quarter to kind of seal it for them. 10 catches, 148 yards, and 2 touchdowns. He also had an interception at the end of the game that I think he might have run back, but he decided to just go out of bounds, and they were able to run out the clock. So, but then their Penn State kid, that was Josh Johnson. There was a point in the fourth quarter where Ironton kind of had it wrapped up. They fumbled the ball on a running play. So you give the ball right back to Liberty Center. Josh Johnson makes a textbook tackle on the Ironton, or on the Liberty Center running back, and he forces a fumble. Yes. So that was a huge play. I mean, you had the momentum just went right back and forth, and then Ironton got a late touchdown to make it seem not as close a game, but it was a very close game right there at the end.
That's what I was going to say. The 28-17 was really more like 21-17. Yeah. It was that close until the late turnover, the late touchdown.
Yep.
Yeah, it was about a minute left when that second fumble occurred that kind of iced the game then for Ironton.
Okay. Well, guys, we've got one more game tonight, and I'm going to let you guys take us in our next segment into that one and finish out the show. I've got to get dressed and get down on the field. I'm going to be doing sidelines for the 7:30 game. So one more game tonight, and that is Indian Valley, 15-0, and Sandusky Perkins, 14-1. Should be a great ball game, and make sure you check that one out as well on our radio network as well as Spectrum, and you can check that one out. But we're going to take a timeout. When we come back, these two guys are going to take you through the rest of the show, and I will head downstairs and enjoy the cool weather down on the field. So we'll take a break, and when we come back, we'll have more of the Tailgate Party Show right after this.
And welcome back to the 6th floor here at Tom Benson Field. Our main host, Frank Salona, he's going to be getting ready to go down on the sideline for our final game tonight, the Division IV matchup between Ganadin Hutton, Indian Valley, and Sandusky Perkins. And I'd like to preview that game a little bit here. Perkins Pirates, they were state champs way back in 1999. They made it to the semifinals last year, but they lost. Now, their big game to get here, they beat a very talented Cleveland Glenville team,
correct,
13-11, and that was a key win for them. They got a great defense. They shut out 6 opponents this year. Some of their key players, they got a young man, Mikey Young, plays linebacker. He's a Harvard recruit, so must be good in the classroom too. Yep. They have a great wide receiver, Braden Collier, 76 receptions, 1,200 yards, 22 touchdowns. He's going to be going to Michigan State. Their running back, Isaac Bunce, 2,316 yards, 26 touchdowns on the year. And their quarterback, Sam Schweidenfer, I know I pronounced that wrong, but 2,632 yards passing and 35 touchdowns. So a very, very balanced team.
That's a bunch of offense.
Yes.
That's a bunch of offense.
They can put some points on the board. Now, Indian Valley, they're no slouch. Now, this is their first appearance in the state championship. Matt Lancaster, their coach, he's been there for 18 years, so he's been around. He knows the team very well. They got a junior running back, Grady Kinsey, 263 yards, or 263 carries, 3,031 yards, and 45 touchdowns on the year. So he's pretty much their offense. He has 5,657 career yards, but defense, he's also great there, 250 career tackles. Now, they feature then a sophomore as their quarterback. He's also their linebacker, Riker Williams. He rushed for 1,223 yards, 14 touchdowns, and he had 1,000 yards passing for 11 touchdowns, and 8 sacks on defense. You don't usually see a quarterback who's your leading sack producer.
As a sophomore.
as a sophomore.
Wow.
And then their other star, fullback, linebacker Jackson Bircher, 89 tackles on the year. So they're pretty much a run-first team tonight.
And I'm interested to see how people run the ball that well. From multiple positions, multiple players. And you really surprised me when you mentioned that, by the way, he threw for over 1,000 yards too. So, they sound like a team that knows how to run the ball. And I'm always interested in what concept are you using to do that? Is it wing T based? Is it I formation based? I don't care whether you're in the gun or not. You can still run wing T based stuff from the gun, and as you can I formation stuff. Is it option oriented? Is there any Woody Hayes robust involved with three backs in the backfield? Yeah, I'm anxious to see this game and look forward to it.
Yeah, Indian Valley comes in 15-0. Sandusky Perkins 14-1. So that should be an excellent matchup tonight. So to kind of wrap it up here, since I got Coach here, I'd like to maybe travel down memory lane here and talk a little bit about the past. And now I started working for WHBC in 1998, and that was the state championship that McKinley had the year after you left.
Correct.
But maybe could you talk a little bit about the 1997 team, your last McKinley team, and the 98 team that your son quarterbacked? What was it like, those two back-to-back state championships?
The 97 team was made up of a senior class that was undefeated as freshmen and a junior class that was undefeated as freshmen. So we had two back-to-back really, really good classes. Many of those kids as underclassmen, they started as sophomores. In both classes, there were numerous of those kids in the senior group and numerous of those kids in the junior group that started as sophomores. So it was really a 3-year run where we knew that we were going to have something special. In 96, I believe that we lost to Iggy in the Rubber Bowl, and they had a comfortable lead at half, and we closed the gap in the second half, which was unusual. Usually when Iggy had you, in that position, they buried you in the second half. But we knew we had something special. And again, they were undefeated as freshmen, and we haven't had many teams that could do that because we play a formidable freshman schedule. They beat Masson, they beat Iggy, they beat everybody that they played. So we had high hopes. In the 97 group, USA Today reaches out to me in May and tells me that we're going to be the number one preseason ranked team in the country. And this is when USA Today was in the business of doing that. And it wouldn't be made public until August, when we're all in August practices. So upon learning that, the first call I made was to Chuck Kyle, because he had been a preseason number one ranked team and had managed that circumstance. That's a different circumstance to manage.
A lot of expectations.
But I talked to Chuck about that because he and I were not just adversaries on the field, but good friends. And Chuck gave me good advice. He said, make sure your kids understand that's an honor, a preseason honor, but what they have to do is they have to focus on making it a postseason achievement. And I sort of had an idea about how to do that, and that was to turn our focus upon us, take these really talented kids and make them as good a player at their individual positions as possible. And so, we weren't concerned about the outcome because we knew that how well we executed and we had a standard of play that we expected. And if we try to reach that standard, we'll collect wins along the way. And they were mature enough to understand that, and so that's what we did. And along the way in 97, we collected some wins that we weren't very happy about. Not me as a head coach, maybe us not as a staff. And the players, when they became unhappy because, we won 32-6, but maybe we had 16 missed tackles, or maybe we had 11 penalties, but they were self-critical along with us being critical.
So you were always looking for something to
always
improve
looking
on.
for us to play the perfect game, which we know is impossible.
Right.
But you're supposed to pursue that, and so we pursued that, and along the way we collected wins. the 98 team, we're losing that great senior class, but we got that great junior class. And it was not as talented as the 97 group,
right.
but they had key figures returning. We had a 3-year starter at center by the name of Steve Smith, who played at Kent State. Benjamin was a 3-year starter at quarterback. Michael Doss was a 3-year starter, probably 1.5 ways, and certainly both ways as a senior,
right.
and numerous other players. And we had good enough classes behind them to complement that senior group. And then Kerry Hodakovic and his staff, made up almost primarily of my guys.
Right.
They did a nice job of carrying the burden of being a state champ the year before and managing circumstances well enough to win it again. Their only loss regular season was to Iggy. They beat Iggy in the playoffs.
And that's the game I remember from that year. It was at Kent State. McKinley came out on top, 31-24.
Yes.
But it wasn't easy.
No, it was not easy. No.
I mean, I remember McKinley had the ball. They're driving for a touchdown, and then Coach Hodakovic decides to call a pass play on 3rd down. You remember that play? They fake the rollout to the right.
Yes.
Then your son, he does a naked boot. Iggy's got 2 guys in his face, incomplete. They don't score, but chip shot field goal.
Yes.
But they missed it. So
yes.
now you give Iggy the ball with about a minute left.
Yes.
They drive right down until they get the ball right at the 1-yard line on a Hail Mary.
Yep.
Now, the guy who was playing defense, I actually know the guy, Jason Halder. He grew up right behind my wife. And so I asked him, because I always wondered this, did that Iggy guy push off? Did he do anything to get the advantage? He goes, no, I just timed it too early. He's like, I was going up and I was coming down when that ball came. Yeah. And the Iggy guy ends up catching it, but Mike Doss comes out of nowhere,
yes.
knocks him out at the 1.
Yes.
I mean, you're going to state.
Yeah. We preserved that win, with that particular moment against them. And in 97, we had it wasn't the state championship game, but it was a regional final, and we're down 19-7 with 7 minutes to go. And they're telling me that the McKinley fans are exiting the Rubber Bowl as fast as they can,
right.
to get ahead of the traffic getting out of there, because we had a full house, or what we considered to be a full house
right.
at the Rubber Bowl. And we came back and won, but we had a miracle play there.
That was the tip pass.
That was yeah. We scored to close the gap to 19-14, and then got the ball back again very late, and so we're in a hurry up mode. And we throw a ball to our leading receiver. Matt Curry was wide to the right, and it was an underneath route. And we were just trying to clear space with the other 3 guys to give Matt some running room, because he was part of the state championship track team that we had in the
right.
spring, and he was a sprinter. It hit him in the face mask and bounced up into the air. And Freddie Wilcox was an inside receiver trying to carry defenders deep to open space and he found it in the air, made it a 360, and sprinted, and they tackled him on, the 1 or the 2?
Yeah, it was right before the goal line.
And we clocked it, got into robust with 3 backs in the backfield, 2 tight ends, and scored on the next play. And then basically the game was over. So we had some luck on our side.
But, hey, sometimes better be
That's
lucky
right.
than be
That's
good.
Right.
And
well, Chuck told me, he said, you can't win a state championship without some luck somewhere along the line. Again, that's from an opposing coach, but he said his first state championship, they had a guy who made a completion in a last possession scenario lying on his back. The ball bounced around, he's on the back, and so they had some luck too.
Yeah, that game featured some stars. Tom Arth was the St. Ignatius quarterback. He played at John Carroll then.
Yep.
He coached at John Carroll, coached at Akron, and now he's the quarterback coach at the Steelers, Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yes,
so,
yes. I lost track of him. I knew all those other stops, but I didn't know that one.
Yeah, and then the Antonio Hall, he played on the offensive line and defensive nose tackle too. So.
As a sophomore.
Yep.
As
he
a
was
sophomore.
Young, but he was big.
Yes,
so.
he was. Yep. That was in '97, but I mean, he then was a
Right.
starter both ways the next 2 years.
Yeah. Yeah, they had a lot of talent on that team. So that 98 year, you beat Ignatius, and then you go to and play Xavier then at Massillon, and that ended up being kind of a blowout.
It was. I think it was 31 to something.
33-10.
Okay.
Beat Xavier.
Yeah.
Now the thing I remember most about that, because that was my first year at WHBC, and I actually covered that game with a different network. I remember before the game, you and your son Ben like just sitting there, throwing the ball back and forth to each other before the game, just like smiling. And it's like you were in your backyard, just having a toss. And you guys look so calm, cool, and collected. And then I went over to the Xavier side, and their quarterback was about ready to explode. I mean, his anxiety level was off the charts. And I just saw those two comparisons. I'm like, this game's over. I mean, McKinley, they got him. So talk about being cool under pressure. What were some of the players that stood out that just didn't seem to get rattled by the bright lights?
Well, Ben was one of them. He was 37-3 in a 3-year career. And you know, he went from that sophomore who was just a kid on the bus to pretty much being the guy that had to drive the bus offensively, you know, and command the huddle and get us in and out of the right play and, you know, hand the ball to those great running backs we had, and we had great complementary receivers also. But you know, mentally, you know, he's got a little bit of an advanced football IQ because he's the son of a kid, and all of them have a little bit of an elevated football IQ. But he was cool as could be. He had ice running through his veins, and yeah, pregame we're playing catch. I'm going to be on the field as the AD, but I want to be clear or be close to him, and so on and so forth. You know, Mike Doss was one of those guys that rose to challenges. You know, and you know. And he was so accomplished that sometimes we had to manufacture challenges for him. We didn't want him to get bored, but, I mean, he had a great night running the ball and catching the ball. Ben had an incompletion on his first pass. I think it was dropped. And his last pass, he went 15 for 17 that night, which is a significant number of completions. You know, and we had great receivers then also. But you know, in my life as a coach, you know, I've had other players like that. Maurice Claret was like Mike Doss in that regard. The bigger the challenge, the tougher the opposition, you know, the better he performed. Mario Manningham was that way. Percy Snow was that way. Che Bryant was that way, you know. So I've been blessed with having guys like that, you know, the better the opposition, the better they played. The more that was at stake, you know, the more they invested to make sure that we won.
How big of an advantage do you think? Because you see a lot of coaches' sons are the quarterback. How big of an advantage do you think that is? Like being able to take your quarterback home every night and getting to spend a little extra time with them doing game planning.
Well, and we did that. You know, people say, you know, you didn't take football home with you. Yeah, we did every night, you know, and my wife wanted to know how practice went, you know, and so certainly we talked football, you know, away from the field and away from the locker room. I think it was a significant advantage in my particular circumstance because, you know, with a son in the league with the Patriots, I learned from them about calling 2 plays in the huddle and letting the quarterback, based on the alignment and how the D deployed themselves, which was the better of the 2 play, and then we imitated their way to communicate which of the 2 we're going to run. It was very simple, but you know, in that particular instance, and I did that the rest of my career. I did it with the kids in Warren, even though they weren't my sons. But Ben was going to be smarter at the line of scrimmage about what to do than I was going to be standing on the sidelines, you know, 25 seconds before the ball was going to be snapped. So we took full advantage of that, and we did that with Joshua prior to that also. But that I think was a huge advantage, and I think in that circumstance we have to take advantage of that. You know,
oh, definitely,
because I like his chances to be correct on the play call better than mine.
Yes, definitely. All right, so for a playoff game or something like that, do you game plan special for it, or do you pretty much go with what got you there and you just like run the standard things?
Okay, we're always gonna attempt to do what we do best. That's number one. We're always going to try to exploit what we recognize and identify as a weakness, you know, in the opposing defense. And nobody's got 11, you know, D1 prospects on the other side of the ball, you know, and you don't have to be a D1 prospect, you know, to play great football. There's a lot of guys that they're great high school football players and don't go on and play D1 football. But, you know, whether it was the coverage that they played, whether it was the front or how they set the front, but we got to handle on coverage and our expectation, the front, how they were going to blitz and if they did and who the blitzers were and so on and so forth. And so we did what we did based on what we thought was going to be best against what they showed. The other thing is that we went into the game, okay, this is what we expect.
Right.
All right. Early in the game, confirm it. Are we getting what we expected?
So do you do that at halftime then? You make adjustments?
Oh, no, we don't wait till halftime.
Okay. All right.
We don't wait till halftime, but if the confirmation is that, yes, they're giving us exactly what we expected, then we stay with what we planned.
Okay.
And by that time, too, we've banked a lot of information, right?
Mm-hmm.
We've banked a lot of things that even though it wasn't part of the plan, we could call on it because we were, 14 games into the season or 15
Right.
games or whatever it happened to be. We had done it against somebody in the past. And that was then maybe plan 2. No, they're not doing what we expected, but we're going to do something that we've already done.
Right.
And that would make sense to anybody, I think. But that was how we went about that.
So you kind of got something in your back pocket.
Yep.
Were there any coaches you had that were like really good at that, or?
Oh yeah, I had multiple offensive line coaches: Dave Gable, Lynn Waffler, Mike Gravella, who were really good at identifying alignments of the front guys. If we were expecting them to be in I don't need to explain this. If we expected the D tackle to be in a 3 technique and he wasn't, he was in what we call a 2-eye. Well, then that was a difference, and they identified stuff like that immediately. The receiver coach was a guy that had to monitor the coverage and confirm that, yeah, they're playing coverage the way we expected them to. Yep. Donnie Short was that guy for me.
Okay, so let's see. So halftime adjustments, is that something you could do a lot with high school kids, or is it kind of a coach thing?
It is, and again, we would do that as much as we could, leave it simple and the same for the blessed souls that played up front for us. We wanted to do that,
Okay.
and we were a big gap block team rather than a zone team.
Right.
And so we felt like gap blocking as our core running concept, power and counter and so on and so forth, was a better answer to multiple fronts and movement fronts and so on and so forth. But we would dare to make adjustments with the skilled guys, because their job are easier than those 5 or 6 blessed goals, counting the tight end up
Right.
front. And we would make subtle adjustments with backs and quarterbacks.
All right, very good. So I believe we got about 1 minute left. So any final words, or?
I think it's been a great weekend. I hope we get one of these games this evening where both teams are playing their A game. I hope it's not decided to the end, maybe even overtime. That's the way we need to end this weekend, or it would be nice to end this weekend. And I think the people here in Canton, Hall of Fame, the Benson Stadium people, Canton City School, I think they've done a marvelous job of presenting this weekend to the public throughout the state of Ohio who made the trip here for the games.
Yeah, I absolutely love it here. I mean, I'm biased because I'm from here, but yeah, I'm glad they locked it down for 3 more years.
Oh, that's
'cause
great.
This is an excellent venue.
That's
so
great.
I'd like to thank everyone for watching this OHSAA pregame tailgate show. Right now, I'd like to send it upstairs to the OHSAA network and Spectrum for our final state championship game, the Division VI matchup between the 14-1 Sandusky Perkins Pirates and the 15-0 Indian Valley Braves.